Well, I come back from another 2-month long hiatus, and of course I'm sick. I'm flabbergasted. I'm on the floor, dead. With the return of both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield era characters in No Way Home, I've been reminiscing about the past 20 odd years of Spider-Man games. So, out of this seemingly endless grab bag of content, I decided to talk about a game that literally nobody remembers. Spider-Man 2 for the PSP. A game I didn't even realize existed until I got it for Christmas one year. Obviously, this isn't going to be the open world classic that we all know for the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox, nor is it the abomination that we are all confused by for the PC, unfortunately. I'd like to finally play that game just for the meme. No, instead of being developed by Treyarch or the Fizz Factor, what the fuck? No wonder they made a weird game with a name like that. This PSP game was made by Vicarious Visions, RIP, who also developed the sequel to Neversoft Spider-Man, which makes a lot of sense because damn does this game feel very similar to the titles that preceded it. It's yet another linear level-based beat-em-up with some Spider-Man flair. You know, saving hostages, chase missions, boss fights, defusing a ridiculous amount of bombs, the whole shebang. From the outside looking in, it seems like the story is the same as the home console releases, but it's actually better in some ways. Unfortunately, Black Cat is completely omitted along with all of the Peter Parker stuff, which is a damn shame because for a movie licensed game, the team over at Treyarch did a pretty decent job of adapting the film's story for a completely different medium. However, in its place, the Vulture from Spider-Man 1 makes a return, and the stories surrounding Shocker, Rhino, and Mysterio are all tied together this time instead of being completely separate. In this game, it's revealed that Doc Ock released all the supervillains to distract Spider-Man as he rebuilds his machine. It's not very deep or Oscar-worthy, and very similar stories have been done before, like in the Spectacular Spider-Man series, but it's interesting that this game tries to alter the story surrounding cut content in a way that makes sense. Something you'll quickly realize is that this is basically just a carbon copy of the first movie game, which is why the Vulture returned since he was already completed for this engine. I was always disappointed that he never returned in Spider-Man 2 or 3, although he would have most likely made a comeback in the cancelled Spider-Man 4 game as John Malkovich, but I'll just get depressed if I keep thinking about that.
Gonna cry?
It's pretty disappointing when game sequels just regurgitate entire missions beat for beat, but the Vulture is an underrepresented character in these games, so I'll take what I can get. Like I said earlier, the open world stuff and some infamous missions from Spider-Man 2 that we all know and love were all cut. However, the missions that still made it into the game are completely fucking different. Instead of being set in the funhouse that can never be topped, Mysterio's levels now take place in a museum. There are some interesting tricks like hostages being holograms and knights being robots, but it sure is just a museum. To be fair, he does get a legit boss fight this time around instead of the one-punch bit from the home console release, but honestly I think I prefer the latter. It just feels more accurate to the character. But if you were really just scratching and itching and waiting for a Mysterio boss fight, then this game gives it to you. The bank robbery scene is no longer just some mindless brawl. Now it's a multi-level mission that involves saving hostages, escaping poisonous gas, lasers, and a chase scene with Doc Ock that's just a copy and paste from the first game. But to make up for it, the train fight is now a side-scrolling beat-em-up, which is hilarious. Shocker's boss battle takes place in a level that's, you guessed it, from the fucking first game. But at least it's a fun 2-on-1 fight that includes the Rhino. It's something that reminds me a lot of Insomniac Spider-Man, where their villains did 2-on-1 battles as well. Even the fusion reactor missions have been improved. These missions were the reason I could never finish this game as a fucking child. Now there's less things to shut down, the fusion reactor's less annoying. They're still difficult, but at least they can be completed by someone who doesn't have the patience of a saint. Now, with all that being said, it's pretty obvious that despite having an additional year of development time, this game was a clear technical downgrade that borrows about 70% of its DNA from the first game to save time and money. I'm just glad that we got something that's different and, in some specific cases, superior to the original game. There are some things that just annoy me, like the pre-rendered cutscenes, which are super fucking ugly. There's a clear difference between the ones that were made for the 6th gen consoles and the ones specifically made for the PSP. While the former aren't the best, the latter does not hold up well whatsoever, and it's honestly some of the worst nightmare fuel that I've ever seen. And much like the levels, there's a significant amount of music that's constantly reused from the first game, which is fine. A lot of it meshes very well with the newer soundtrack that we all know, But then the game starts using the Green Goblin's theme for Doc Ock, which is weird because he's fucking dead, but it's no biggie. My biggest gripe of all is that there's only 19 stages, some of which can last for as little as 2 minutes. It's very easy to beat the game in 2 hours, credits included. Now, to be fair, I was on easy and I have completed this game multiple times in the past, so you can give or take an hour or so for blind players. But still, that's probably one of the shortest games I've ever played on this channel. And no worries, that's fine. Usually in these types of Spider-Man games, there's tons of challenges, unlockable costumes, and cheats to change the experience. So let's start there. Oh, there's no good cheats, or anything else to do after the game is done. For a Spider-Man game made in vein of the Neversoft titles, hell, as a sequel to the first game, this is kind of ridiculous. I get that the 6th gen version of Spider-Man 2 didn't have alternate costumes either, and while that does still upset me to this day, there were still other things to do. Challenge modes, races, pizza delivery, secret hideouts, Mary Jane missions. Here, you get training missions and storyboards. While yes, they're very cool, that does not count as additional content. This is probably due to a myriad of things, from the small size of the UMD, the amount of money that they were given, and the time it'd take to develop new side content. This is just a huge drawback of being a handheld version of a movie tie-in game that's made to simply cash in on a lucrative demographic. I'm actually surprised that we got something this decent. It's just a real shame because for a game this fun, there's nothing else to do once that short campaign is over. But hey, at least it was a fun time. The dev team at Vicarious Visions were met with an interesting dilemma. How do you take a state-of-the-art superhero game based on what will become one of the best comic book movies ever made and translate that to lesser hardware? And instead of just throwing in the towel and not trying whatsoever, they decided to make a completely different game in vein of the titles from the past 4 years of the character. A style of game that would be left by the wayside after this release, in lieu of more open world games much like that other Spider-Man 2 we know. At least that was the case until 2010's Shattered Dimensions and 2011's Edge of Time, only for that developer to be pushed into making more open world movie tie-in Spider-Man games. Believe me, I'll get to those one day. All in all, as a goodbye to linear Spider-Man games, 2 does a pretty good job of providing you with an enjoyable experience. At least with what little budget Vicarious presumably had. It has absolutely no extra content or replayability whatsoever, but if you're a Spider-Man fan, I recommend at least emulating it. I promise you'll complete it in one sitting. And that's it! That's a wrap on my videos in 2021. This year has been a doozy, to say the least. I was supposed to come back from my trip and bust ass on a Halo Infinite video, but 1, I got sick, 2, the holidays were more complicated than I thought that they'd be, and 3, I just didn't feel like my heart was in it. Don't get me wrong, I love the game. I just honestly feel so disillusioned with forcing myself to play new games and making a video ASAP, all for the sake of possibly getting noticed. Which is especially weird because all of my popular videos are on older games or topics that I'm passionate about. I tried a lot of new things this year, and not a lot of them panned out. I unfortunately learned what it's like to make a passion project and then slowly begin to hate it over time. I'm gonna say this once, and only once, and then I'm gonna put this bitch to bed. Simply put, the PlayStation 2 Retrospective's format and style was too rigid and too different from the channel that it makes sense to make an entire channel focused on that branding, and I don't want to do that. I'd much rather make a video on a Wii game, and then a fucking Xbox game, and then a PC game, and a PS2 game, rather than just becoming the PS2 guy. My missteps have led me to stagnate in my creativity, which has affected my growth. This year I made it to 1,400 subs, which I'm still very proud of, but that's compared to the 1,100 I had at the end of last year, which isn't the best if we're looking at how far I've been growing these past couple of years. However, at the same time, I've also seen the exact kind of content that I want to make that you guys also seem to enjoy, like my videos on X-Men Destiny, Fatal Bullet, and my childhood PS2 video, which I'll do my best to double down on this next upcoming year, not by just doing the same thing over and over again, but by trying to emulate the creation of those videos by simply following my passions. Anyways, enough rambling. I thank every single one of you for watching this video. Here's to the end of 2021 and to another year of making these dumb ass videos. I say that with a smile on my face because while they're dumb, I'm still proud of them. I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas and have a very Happy New Year. If you want to see more videos on comic book games, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that jazz. I'll catch you guys next time. Later, kids. Have a good night.
Prepare to tangle with Doc Ock and his terrifying tentacles. You control the action. Spin your way through 5 different levels. Let Spider-Man shoot webs, throw punches, jump rooftops, even swing into action. Because with Doc Ock on the loose, the best defense is a Spidey offense. Spider-Man 2 web action video game plugs into your TV set. Batteries not included.